Hi everyone, welcome back to another color along and product review with me. Today I'll be trying out the acrylic markers from Arrtx in my coloring books as well. These ones come with the big 3mm bullet tips, but they also include some extra brush tips and some smaller bullet nibs as well, which is really handy in my opinion. And look at that, they got the number printed right on the cap, so I don't have to spend time sticking the labels today like last time. So first thing first, I want to swatch out the colors in my swatch book. This will help me to see the full color selection and just get a feel on how the markers perform on the paper. These are the traditional style acrylic markers though, so you need to activate the ink by pushing down the tips on the paper. So one feature I really like about these markers is the clear windows on the barrel that let you see the ink level. Most acrylic markers usually come in white or black barrels, so it's really nice to have that extra bit of transparency to keep track of how much the ink is left. And let me tell you, there was a lot of pushing involved in this video to get these activated. I mean, it didn't take long for the ink to flow out, but you know, I feel like I've been spoiled by the other Arrtx markers because they come reactivated, but still once they are flowing they seem pretty smooth. Here I'm just finishing adding in the numbers. There are 72 colors in this set, and to be honest, I already like the color selection much better than my other Arrtx set, mainly because there are much more an even mix of light, medium and dark shades for each colors, except for the 3 metallic at the ends. I don't understand why they're adding in like a pink metallic. The silver and the yellows make sense, but yeah, you can see that comparison between the two sets, or actually 3 sets, because I have both 60A and B of the other acrylic markers. But this set, they already have so much more green and red and blue as of the middle tones and the darker shades, so I really like this set. I think they are a bit better selection. I think the Arrtx people's listening to our review. Next, I will show you how to change the different nibs on these markers. So you need a clean jar of water and a tweezer. All you need to do is pull out the original tips they come with. They come out pretty easy, and clean your tweezer and then put in whatever tips that they additional that you wanted to try. I wanted to try out the brush nib, but I followed the instruction video on their website on how to activate the brush nibs, and it was pretty difficult to do, so I ended up just using my finger to push the nibs instead. I also wanted to show you that with some of these, because there was no instruction included in the box itself, I didn't know that you had to put it in water, and some of them didn't get clean because the ink just dried out, whereas the other one got clean properly in the jar. So yeah, you can see here the ink come out a little bit, but I ended up having to push it a bit more just for the ink to fully comes out. Now let's experiment with some techniques we can try using this marker. Just so you know, these are very juicy when you use it with the original tips they come with, and they have quite heavy ink flow too. I actually made the mistake of pressing the tip to reactivate just out of habit, since most of my other acrylic markers don't have great ink flow. And I can see a little cast from the black square where we did with the 3mm tips. I also want to do another square with the 3mm tips, but this time with the brighter colors. I want to see how the colors layering on top later. And here I'm showing you that the 3mm tip you can get pretty even thin lines, whereas with the brush tip you get a bit more variety of thickness. You didn't see it earlier, but I have prepare these petals with the one side is a 3mm and one is with the brush nibs, and I'm using the Prisma colors on them just to see if I can do the pencils on top. Some of the markers, they are matte finish, so you can't go on top with the pencil. So I think these are the case with this one. With the 3mm nibs, I think they ink come out a lot more, so there's a lot more texture of the pencils showing up on top, whereas with the brush tip you see earlier, the layering is a bit more thinner and you don't see as much of the pencil texture on top of it. I also want to use the polychromos. Now polychromos usually not a great versatile pencil for this kind of technique. I love them, but usually I'll go with the Prisma. However, I was pleasantly surprised on how well these pencils show up on top of these acrylic markers. Now this is not my first time of doing pencil on top of acrylic. I have done this many times before. However, it is on actual acrylic paint. And with these acrylic markers, keep in mind that there is a limit of how many layers of pencil you can do on top. So about 2 or 3 layers would be a sweet spot. Now I want to show you something that I did not expect at all. This black square still haven't dried fully, and you can see the paper crinkly up a bit. I think it's still wet, but anyway, let's move on. I dry a light purple and a yellow on top of the square that we did with the brush nib, and the color was so opaque. Actually so surprised. But then with this blue one, I think because of the layer underneath didn't dry properly, so it's have a bit of a black cast. However, on the orange square, it actually come out really nicely and opaque. And I want to see if I can blend the colors of this marker. I have only used the markers with the pencil, so I thought, well, I'll try a bit to see how they blend it together. And I use a mixture of blue, sort of like a turquoise, pink, yellow and white, and I was pleasantly surprised as how well these one come together. And I also able to still adding in pencil on top. How great is that? At this point, I still want to practice a little bit more with these markers because I feel like they not like the other Arrtx that I have. That's a bit more drier, and this one is really opaque, so I thought I'll try to layering them and see how they come together, just the markers themselves. So I want to do this little painting, I don't know how you say this, sketch of some forget-me-not flowers. I wanted to use this marker in this sketchbook because the paper in this one is a little bit smoother than the other sketchbook that I have, and I thought maybe they will perform a bit differently. Now the black, despite it was really dark and juicy when using the 3mm tip, I changed to the brush nib because I was scared of it like bleeding through everywhere. So it didn't really layering as good as I thought it would be, but I don't know, it wasn't really an issue with this type of painting anyway, because we're gonna cover most of the base. So I did a dark blue, a middle blue, and we just do 5 petals flower. I just want to do quick ones. You know, you're not gonna sit here and spend so much time on these little sketches. I just wanted to feel how the markers behave on the papers a little bit more before I go into my coloring books. So I did some purples as well, and the light blue right on the top, and you can see that they layering so well on top of each other. I was so happy with how this marker performed in this sketchbook, and I'm sure I'm going to use it more just to have fun and do background, because with my other acrylic I could never find a dark colors enough to do any background, and I had to resort to use my Posca. But with the Posca, they don't come with the brush nibs, and I found very hard to control the Posca nib, especially when the ink keep drying out and I keep having to activate. That's where my habit come from, because the ink always dry. If you follow me on Patreon, you'll see how much I struggle with them all the time. But yeah, I think these will be my new favorite marker to use in my coloring books as well, for the more flat, strong, dark background. But yeah, this is how the little painting comes out. I really like it. They're so cute and I had so much fun. But now let's move on to actual coloring. I'm going to do in Twilight Garden, and I'm going to do a page similar to this one because I love these flowers and I think I want to show you how I did them. This page was done with my old Arrtx marker, which is this one, and they are the brush nib and you didn't really have to activate them. Anyway, we are going to be coloring in this page with the deer, and as you can see, all the flowers on here are pretty much the same as the ones on the previous page, so I think it's great if you want to practice on either the page. I also be using a mix of both polychrmos and Prismacolor pencils, and I'll be using my new markers along with a few colors from my older Arrtx acrylic marker set as well, because I want to show you that you can complete this page using either set. Start with the Bluebells. I'm using the color 34 for my 60B set as the base for my lighter blue flowers. You can see the old marker with the white barrels, and for the darker blue flower I'm using a sort of like a berry winkle colors from the new set, and this color is 458. For the flower buds, I'm blending both colors to create a simple gradient. I add a little bit of the darker blue at the base of the bud and then use a lighter blue for the rest of the area. And for blending, I'm just using a Q-tip. Next, I want to do some purple bell flowers. I'm using the dark purple 45 from my 60B set, and I will do that for 2 flowers. You can do for all of them, but I will do the other flowers a bit differently. For the inner of the petals, I'm going to use a lighter purple 306 from the new set. And I also wanted to try and blend the 2 markers over a slightly bigger area, so I'm going to practice this on these flowers right here. So I'll use the light purple and the dark purple, and I just use my finger to blend this time. Now that you make sure everything have dried completely, you can start adding in the pencil. I'm using the Blue Lake from my Prismacolor 1102, and I just start adding in some detail. Then I'll add in a darker colors with my polychromo. This one is ultramarine, and you can see didn't use a lot of force with this one, so just light to medium pressure. And then to finish it up, I will add in the blue violet or violet blue from the Prismacolor. You can try to find similar colors from each set if you only have the Prismacolor or polychromos, but either colors will work fine for this page. To make everything a little bit less flat and adding in some highlight, I'm using the white pencil from Prismacolor with acrylic markers. When you use it along with the color pencil, I found that adding in white will really help to bring out the dimensions, because we do everything so simple. So I think the white is really good additions. Now for the other flowers, as you can see, I'm just using the same color combinations. So with the polychromo ultramarine, I'm adding in for these flowers here. If you want a slightly darker variation, you just need to add less of the lighter color and more of the darker color. So for this one, you can use a bit more ultramarine and the blue violet instead of adding in the blue lake. And then I add in the white with both prisma colors and the acrylic markers. For the purple bell flowers, I'm starting off with the parma violet from the prisma colors. And again, just the same principle of how I adding in the shading for these flowers. I'm just adding in the shadow first, and for the shadow of the inside of the flowers, I'm using the lilac. So I know that the lilac is not available in the Prismacolor anymore, so you just use whatever colors that they replace with, and then I'll use the violet from the Prismacolor as a darker colors. I will adding in some shading for the top of the flowers and just a little bit inside of the flowers, and then you going in with the white, the same as the bluebell, and then I also adding in the white for the insides of the flowers as well. Then I will do the same for the other one, except for these flowers here. I decided that I want to start off first with the violet instead of the parma violet. So I'm just adding in the purple first, and you can see at the start your colors might look a bit grainy, but you can pretty much blend it out. So next I'll use the lilac for this one, because for this one I wanted it to look slightly lighter than the other flowers, so I only want to use these two colors. And you can see, even if we only use two color pencil and a white, it still make the flower look very lively, and I think it look a lot painting like that way instead of using so many colors of the pencil. And then for this one, where I did try to use the two purple acrylic to blend, I think it didn't turn out so well, so I used the lilac to just kind of cover it up a bit, and then use the violet as usual. I'm only do demonstrations of a few flowers, so for the rest of the flowers you can do exactly the same. So you can decide if you want a bit more blue or you want a bit more purple. It's up to you. Let's move on to these daisy. I decided to do them yellow, and for the base color I was adding in the 106 from my new Arrtx. Then for the gradient, I want to adding in the orange from the 60B set, which is the 18, and I just using the orange and then go back in with the yellow to make the paint kind of wet again, and then I'll use my finger to blend. I'll do with my fingers a lot because it's just quicker to go in with my finger than with the Q-tip, even though sometimes it is not accurate. So do whatever that you need to do. I'm just a bit more used to do things with my finger. Another thing I wanted to say is I'm using the colors from both sets because these sets had different colors, shades. So I'm just trying to find the shades exactly what I want them to be. So if you wanted to use the color from the same set, that you can just pick out a similar colors and you'll be fine. Now, after you adding in all of the orange, I'm using the white from my 60B set only because this one have a really soft brush tip, so I found that it's easier to blend seamlessly. And then I'll go in with my pencil. I'm using the mineral orange. And I know you didn't see it because my camera cut out, but for the center of the flowers I did use a black pencil. I just adding in pretty much straight up black because we are going to do something with the acrylic markers on top. Now for a bit more shading just around the center of the flowers, I'm using the espresso, and you just do very lightly. Then back to the center of the flower, I'm using the new Arrtx colors 577. This is a really nice sap green colors, and I'm just adding all over the center while leaving a bit of the black space still showing through. Then I'm going in with a lighter brown from the 60B set 51, and then I used a bit of white or at the edge, just add a lot of dot and then some black lines. You don't have to do this for all around, but like just in some space. And then I used the canary yellow from the prisma because I wanted to bring back a bit of that yellow that I kind of cover with the white pencil. And then for the other flowers I did the same, but because it was the back angle, the underneath angle, so it showed the underneath of the petal, so I decided to have a bit more orange, and that's why I'm adding in the orange first, just to show that it's look a bit darker than the other. Then I decided to go in with the espresso and make it even darker for all around that, the stem. Then I'm adding in the mineral orange once again. And of course the white from the prisma. Now moving back to the stems and leaves of the bell flowers, I'm going to use the same exact green that we use for the center of the yellow. I'm not going to use too many green for this one, so I'll just use the 577 from the new markers, and all you need to do is just adding in the base color first. So as you can see up to this point, that is pretty much the process that I use for when I do this kind of acrylic and color pencil pages. I'll just adding in the base with the acrylic, and then I'll pick out the appropriate colors using the color pencils and adding in shadow and highlight with them. I decided to do some of the flower buds for this group of the bell flowers blue because I wanted to mix the blue and the purple together so they even out properly throughout the page. So I just wanted to do some blue. The color combinations is exactly the same as I did those flower bud at the beginning. You can also probably tell that I left the leaf and a stem colors, because at this point I feel like everything touching each other so much. I need to leave some of the detail uncolored so I can tell what I'm going to do, because sometimes the acrylic is very opaque and it's hard to see the detail. Now for the pencil detail, I'm using the Prussian green from the Prisma color, and all I did is adding in some light following the curve of the leaves, and the same with the little leaves that touching the flower bud and the stem of the flowers. I will do the same thing, so just adding it down, adding in a bit of shadow, and then leave some area for highlight. It's a little bit tricky to explain, but you probably can see what I'm doing on the screen. So I'll do that for pretty much all of them. Very simple. For the little bit that coming out of the flowers, I just use the yellow 106, the same as the daisy, and adding in the flower for a little tip, and then I'll use the blue violet and the espresso to adding in the shadow. Onto the leaves of this daisy, I wanted to use mostly acrylic, so I'll start off with this really lovely, almost like a chartreuse or lamp peel from the Prisma, and this one is the 574 from the new set, and you can see that I just adding in the color for the base, follow the shape of whatever drawn on the paper. Then I'm going in with the color 55 for my 60-piece set, and then I'll just add it in for a little bit of highlight. You can see I just add it at the tip of each section of the petals only. And once you are done, you can go in with the pencil. I'm just going to use the Prismacolor Prussian green, and I'll just adding in a bit of shading, and at the same time like adding in the detail to bring back out the shape of the leaves. Then after that, I'll just use a bit of white on each little sections of the leaves to create the lightest highlight for each sections, and I think this turns out really nice. I think it's quite different if we just use the pencil. And then moving on to the red clovers. Now for this one, I know the leaves look like they are white clover, but you know, I just wanted to do them pink. So for this I used a mixture of pink from both sets. So I used a lighter pink from the new set 313 and then a lighter pink from the old set, which is a 42. I just want to see which one create better with the pencil, because for my others newer set I didn't change the nib of that one, so it's still the bullet tip with the 3mm one. But anyway, I decided I wanted to add in the 44, which is the dark pink from the older 60p set, and then I'll just use a bit of magenta to add in, you know, a bit of detail and shadow, because with just the acrylic it can be looking quite flat unless you know, adding in more darker colors, and I just feel like I'm not I didn't want to use another darker acrylic on it. I just wanted to use pencil, so I just adding in a little bit. Well, I'm pretty much just go through the line art, so instead of it was black and now it's pink, so and then I'll just use a bit of white on the very tip, mostly concentrate on the top of the flowers, and then, you know, just a little bit at the bottom. And for the smaller flowers that hasn't bloomed yet, I did use a 44 for the darker base, and then I used the magenta and then a little bit of white. So very simple, but I just wanted to test out which if the 3mm bullet nib can handle the pencil or not, because I tried it on the sketchbook, as you can see before, and it worked really well. But that one, like I said, it has a bit more of a tooth, whereas coloring book, they often sometimes they don't have enough tooth for a lot of technique to work. So as you can see on here, I decided to use with the pencil to test out the technique. You can do exactly like the other flower. I think that's a lot easier to do, where this one, you can see it take me a lot longer just to do with the pencil. So I would highly recommend the other way, but if you just feel more comfortable using pencil, you can use this way too. And yeah, I'll just sit and do each little petals, leaving a little bit of the lighter pink showing through at the tip of each petals. I don't know if it's count as each petals or is it just a space. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I'll just do that for the rest of this one. And then I'm adding in the white just the same as the other one, as you can see, and it turns out quite nice, but you can see that the effect is exactly the same. So I would use another acrylic for faster result. And then for the stems and everything, I decided to use the older markers, which is the 63 from the 60p set, because I feel like this green is slightly different than the other green that we have used from the newer set, and the newer set didn't have any green that quite similar to this one, so I decided to use this. And then for the detail with the pencil, I wanted to use a dark green from the Prisma color, so dark green, and I'll do the same thing as I did with the leaves of the bluebells, where I just adding in some light following the shape of the leaves and leave a bit of highlight so I can adding in the white. Now I will show you how to do the clover leaves. Really simple, and it turns out so beautiful. So for the base, I'll just add in that same green that we did use, the 63, the C63 from the 60B set, and then I'll go in with the 55 from the same set, the 60B as well. So this is a really light green, and you can see I just follow that highlight, that not really highlight, isn't it? But it's just like how the clover leaves look. And then once everything dry, I add in the Prussian green in the exact same spot, just to create a bit of depth for the leaves. Once you are done, I'm adding in the dark green. You can see just where the shadow is, mostly where all the leaves like touching each other, and then a little bit at the center. Now for the last flowers, I decided to do them like white flowers, and I have no idea what these are. So I started with the leaves first, and I'm using the 574, just adding in down the green. This green is exactly the same green that we use for the leaves of the yellow daisy. So I'll just add it all in for the base colors. Next, I'm using the dark green, and I start adding in the detail. And if you notice until now, all the colors that we've been using, especially for the green, I have been repeating in both the acrylic markers and pencil, because when you do a lot of flowers, they have so many colors on the flowers themselves, so I like to use just limited of green color to bring the page together. You don't have like so many colors going on. And lastly, I'm just adding in the white highlight. Now I'll show you how to do the flowers. All you need is a white and a light gray. I decided to pick out the white from the new set because the new set the white is very opaque, whereas my 60B set the white is a little bit more softer, and I'll just adding in pretty much the white, and then I'll use the 93, which is a light warm gray from my old 60B set, and then I use it to adding in the shadow. So very simple, because I feel like you don't need a lot of colors when it comes to this kind of bold looking style that we're going for. Of course, if you want to do adding in different kind of colors to create white, you can do that, but I'm just showing you like you can do really simple with just acrylic, and we just use white and gray. Now that I'm done with the white flowers, I feel like I still need to have a bit of colors on them, so I decided to use a light yellow, but because I didn't feel like changing to the different nibs for these markers, so I decided to just use a brush and pick up the colors from the actual acrylic markers and just adding them in that way. And then for the center, I use a bit of black, and then the green 574, and I was just adding in a bit of green outside, and I'll use the yellow, the 106 from the Daisy, yellow daisy, for a bit of like yellow around. Now at the moment you can't see them very well, but you can see that here I just use the fine liner, and then I just adding in a little bit of line around them to actually you can see them, because the yellow itself is really light, and then the white background is also very light, so everything just kind of blended in. But I really wanted to a yellow bit, and then I'll just use a bit of white for the center. And then this flower turning out so cute. It reminds me a little bit of apples flowers, but I'm not really sure. Now let's moving on to the butterfly. From the drawing, I reckon it's a monarch butterfly, so I'm using a mix of orange and yellow. So for the orange, it is the 18 from the old 60B set, and for the yellow, I'll just pick up the yellow from the new set, which is the 106. I just kind of wanted to be like a light the cover, that's why I use it with the brush, and then I'll use a black to adding in the detail for the edge. And for the pattern of the actual wings, I just use a black Prismacolor pencil to adding in. I kind of ignore what was drawn on the petals because I didn't really like how those patterns were drawn, so I kind of just use a reference and draw on my own. But you can just follow the shape that already draw for you and just adding them black in. Then after that, I'll use some Prismacolor, so I use this cadmium orange hue and adding in some shading, and then I'll go back in with the yellow acrylic from the beginning, the 106, and I'll just use a brush to add back in a little bit of yellow. Now the reason why I did that is because I still can see the black line in the background, and I really like that. And for the other wings that behind, I use a brown or burnt ochre, I think brown ochre, burnt ochre, 943 from the Prismacolor. Sorry, the pencil is very short and I'm not quite sure what the name is, but I think it was a brown ochre or burnt ochre. And then I'm just adding in a lot of little white dots in for the wings. I will include the names of the pencils and the markers in the description box so you can find them there. Now let's move on to the deer. Finally, I'm adding in a base color first using the colors from my older Arrtx, which is a 50. This is the color 50 from the 60B. I just want something a bit brown and orange mixed together but not too dark. And then for the yellow that you see I'm using here, I use a 102 from the new set, but I use a brush to pick up the colors because I wanted to be able to lay flat and not puddle. And then I use a mix of orange from the Prismacolor, so I use a mineral orange and then the burnt ochre and then the espresso to blend. So you can see that it pretty much I'm just trying to adding in the shadow and the shading for this to create like fur texture, and then I'm adding in a little bit of white. Also pick up with my brush. Make sure to clean your brush in between or else play like dry and crusty and it will be really hard to control. And then I'll do the same with the other ear. Now I did add in a bit of the number 10 from the 60B set because I feel like this light yellow is even lighter. And then I'll add in a skin tone colors 19 from the older set, the 60B. And then I'll just adding in the espresso and the mineral orange once again. And then I'll go back in with the number 10 from the older set to add in the fur. I feel like with the animal, the brush nib make it a lot easier to do than actually with the bullet tip. That's why I use so many colors from this older set for the deer itself, but I love the white from the new set, so I decided to use the white for the fur. Also because I have never done anything with animal related using the acrylic, it can be a little bit tricky even for me because of my skill is not like the best with acrylic. I don't really use acrylic. Don't even say about acrylic markers. Normal acrylic, I don't use it very much. So with pencil, with the animals, it can be quite tricky. But as you can see that I'm coloring in this deer, I'm slowly finding out which style is suit for this medium. So at the end of this video you will see that I decided to go with a more like a cutesy illustrative look rather than like a realistic. I have done realistic looking animal many times, like semi-realistic with pencil, but it is very tricky to do with these markers. But I didn't want to give up and I wanted to try my best. So you can see for the entire deer, I leave out some spot for the highlight, and I adding in the number 10 of the Arrtx, and then the other brown color that you see is a 50. So pretty much only a few markers that you see me use on here, and the same amount of color pencils as well. So we didn't have like a ton of colors. It just feel like it take forever for me to understand what I'm doing, because I didn't really have a clear set in my head what I wanted to do for this deer. I wanted to look a certain way, but I didn't know how to achieve it until the halfway through the coloring. But as you can see here, I'm just adding in all of the shading and the spot first, pretty much like block coloring it first, just so I know what sort of shape I'm working with and which highlight spot or darker spot that I need to preserve. So you can see I'm done here. So I was like, okay, I'm quite happy with that. So now I'm going in with the details. So I'm going in with the eyes first. For the eye, I'm just using like the 90% warm gray from the Prisma colors. You can use black as well. I'm just scared of using black. So I tend to use a 90% warm gray, and then I use mineral orange. So for my orange, it's mostly from Prisma color, and I mainly use mineral orange, cadmium hue orange cadmium hue, and burnt ochre, along with the espresso as my shading. So you can see here I'm using the mineral orange, just blending it in. I didn't want to use a lot of force, but you can see at the moment with a bigger area it can be very noticeable if your pencil showing the texture on the acrylic, and you can see especially on the nose of the deer. At this moment you can see it very clearly, and I didn't know how to really blend it, because remember how I told you there is a limit amount of layers you can do with the pencil on top of the acrylic markers, so it can be quite tricky to do fur. So at this point it's looking really rough, and I'm literally just sharing with you my process of coloring and figure out this new medium, but I think it turns out quite okay in the end. And then I was like, okay, I'll just try to use the bit of burnt ochre to, flicking the furs a little bit. When you do fur for animal, whatever animal you do, just make sure you follow the shape of the animal. The direction of the furs is really important, and often sometimes it's even more important than the actual colors, because even if you got the right colors but your furs is all over the place, it's still not gonna look right. So for this one, I know that at the moment I'm really struggling with the texture, so I'm just trying to concentrate on to do the fur in the right direction, which is follow around the shape and the eyes. And then I was like, okay, let's try to go back in with the marker to see what I can achieve. So I went back in with the original color base that I did, which is the 50, the 50, and I just adding a little bit of colors. And then at this point you can see that I started to able to blend the colors, started to able to blend with the pencil, and I was really happy with that. Also, I decided to fix the eyes and do it a more like an animated QZ eyes look, because I feel like the eye at the beginning not gonna fit the style that I'm trying to go for. So I did that. Also fixed the nose, and then I adding in a little bit of mineral orange in this area of the shadow of the chest, just a little bit, not too much. You can see I do quite light-handed. I just want to have like a bit of texture there for the fur, but not too much. And for the yellow that you see earlier, it actually a jasmine from the Prismacolor, so I did ended up using a little bit of jasmine as well. And then just use a bit of espresso. You're gonna do very, very gently, so don't try to make it like opaque at the moment. I will slowly show you what it looked like in the end, or you can skip ahead and have a look to see if you like the result. But at this point, you can see this body shape here. I thought, well, I know it's gonna be quite dark, and if I can't layer a lot of colors, I might just going to add in a darker color straight away. So usually I'm using the burnt ochre, by the way. So usually when you do animals, and if you want the fur to look a bit realistic, or you want it to have a lot of dimensions and depth, you gotta have to build up the colors really slowly with the lighter color first and then the dark color later. That is what it is usually with the pencil, with the color pencil. But because I know that my layering ability with the acrylic underneath is quite limited, so I decided just go straight in with the dark colors. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with doing the fur. So at this point, like for now, I feel like I don't want to do it anymore. So I decided that I just wanted to adding in the spots for the deer first. And I use the number 10, the same color at the chest and the chin, you know, in the lighter area. So I just add that in. Then I thought, well, I didn't like how white it is. Even though it is a cream color, I still like too white. So I ended up adding in a bit of the 106 from the flowers. I'm just going to add in all of them, and I use my finger to smudge it a bit. And then I was like, I want this deer to look more orange, because I think at this point I has been coloring for a little while and I started to get a bit of tunnel vision, so I ended up fixing a lot. But I feel like with this deer, I wanted to have a bit more oranges colors on the fur, so it look a bit more animated. Because the color that I used for the deer at the beginning, it looked really nice and subtle, but it's look how do I say it didn't make deer pop. So I wanted to use this really bright orange from the same 60-piece set, which is a number 18. So with the number 18, you can see at the beginning, I just used my finger to smudge, because I didn't know how much of this orange I wanted to add in. And by adding in a little bit and use your finger to smudge, I was able to control how much I wanted to be appear in. And at this point, you can see I was starting to slowly realize that, oh, maybe I can do fur this way. And I really like the color and the texture. It's almost remind me of when you know, like you see paintings and in coloring, not coloring book, but what's that, children coloring book, children books, and they look really nice this way. So I really like it. So I went back with the original color, which is the 50, and I dim down that orange a little bit, so it's not so noticeable so much, but like in the background. And that way it feel like the two colors are mixing, but in reality I didn't really mixing anything. I just kind of do this texture so it's appear like it's blending in together. And then I use the number 10 the cream again, and I'm adding in a little bit of like extra fur, because I thought, well, now that I know I want to do a bit more children-like books, I wanted to make the fur stand out more, the texture stand out more. So I just adding a little bit, not too much. You can go overboard with this style quite easily. So just making sure that you do it, but every once in a while you stop and like stand back and have a look to see if you have done enough. Because for me, I think I had to do that a couple of times, because it was quite hard to stopping yourself from just adding more. And then I realized that with this mineral orange, it blends the 18, the orange number 18, it blending it so nicely, so I decided to use it to blend. And then for the rest of this deer, I pretty much use the same technique. For the leg of the deer, I used the number 50, and then I blend it out with the 19 from the 60-piece set too. And then I'll just add in that number 18 orange at the top, and then I'll go, you have pretty much have to go back in with the 50. Now at this point, I'm pretty much done with the deer, and then I realized that I can pick up the colors from the markers because I forgot about it halfway. You know, like I got a bit stressed with blending the deer, so I kind of forgot that I can pick up the colors. So I ended up using my brush to pick up some of the color from the 18 and just blend it out. And you can see it's so beautiful at the end. I just feel like it looks so cute and will remind me a lot of like very playful style of children book or fairy tale book. So I'm quite happy with the result. Now for the brush, make sure it's damp but not wet. Anyway, I hope you have fun with this video and I hope you learn something new. I have the 15% off code for the Arrtx marker in the description box if you want to check it out. And this is what the result look like. I love how this page turns out. I have a lot of fun, and you can see at the back here there's nothing bleed through at all. Anyway, thank you for watching this video and listen to me yapping for 1 hour. I will see you guys soon in the next video. In the meantime, take care and happy coloring. Bye.